Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. On the last Thursday of every month, we have three short speakers, and our first speaker tonight is KD.
I'm KD and I'm an alcoholic. And I only have about 15 minutes, so I guess I'll just start from where it started, what it was like. I first started drinking when I first started waitressing, which was when I learned how to open up the fridge and get my mom or dad a beer. but but I only started getting tipped when I figured out how to open it. But until then, sips of beer or wine coolers did just fine. And then it was going to the bar with my mom at Applebee's. It was great. I didn't know it was any different. We would sit at the bar, and I'd have Shirley Temple and chicken strips, and we'd play Uno all night, and she'd get hammered, and we'd drive home. And I remember a time, it was the first time I ever DD'd for anybody, and I was 8, and she was taking forever. She talks to everybody at the bar, and so I go out to the van, I start to go to sleep, and then I hear her slap against the van, and she's like, you gotta drive, I can't. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm 8, I can't reach the pedal. And she's like, no, you have to, we're gonna die if you don't. And I'm like, okay, fine. And she's like, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna reach my leg over, and I'm gonna work the pedal, and you just keep it straight, and you just steer. And I'm like, all right, that's not too hard because we don't have any power steering, so I'm just gonna sit there and keep it steady. And we start to leave, and I'm turning out. She's screaming at me. I'm turning out of the parking lot, and we're going down the highway, and the little airport highway. It's probably like speed limit's probably like 55, but she starts screaming at me more. She's like, you're all over the road. You're not. And I'm not. She's just drunk, so everything's going like this for her. And I'm like, I swear I'm staying within the lines. I'm doing the best I can. And anyway, she gets out. She starts screaming more. I pull over. She gets out. She starts screaming more. And then she starts driving, and she's just driving hysterically, and she's very drunk. And she's crying, and she's blaming me. She says we're gonna die, and this is all my fault. We get home, and she's just sobbing uncontrollably. And we get home, and we go inside, and it's like it never happened. Wake up the next morning. Well, I wake up the next morning. She has a hangover, of course. And so very, very scary stuff in my early years. I would say that's when the drinking stuff started. The spiritual sickness started pretty early. I grew up Catholic, getting shoved into white little frilly dresses and pantyhose, and it wasn't fun. But that wasn't the worst of it. My father was also a very, very sick man, and he played that part for me. He literally played Jesus for me. He grew his hair out very long, his beard, and he was drunk, creepy, and just at night. And I really wanted to talk to God. I really wanted to talk to Jesus. And I always had all these questions. And instead of guidance, it was more like, why don't I take on that role for myself? So he did, and he would tap on my window, and he'd ask me to, come outside, like Jesus wants to have a talk with you. And I'd get really excited, and, his face would kind of be covered. And, so I really thought that was Jesus coming to my window, talking to me at night. And it was disturbing. And at one time, things were getting really heavy in the house. I figured out, I didn't figure out, I kind of always knew. I just didn't understand. But it dawned on me when I was about 9 years old, and in 4th grade, I figured out, with the help of a teacher, that my parents are domestic sex traffickers, and that hurt really bad, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I really wanted to die, and I tried to kill myself, and it was horrible. But and I didn't know what to do, so I really needed to ask Jesus. I really needed to ask God for help, so I could figure out what to do about my family. I wanted to save everybody. I just wanted it to be done. I wanted to fix it, and I couldn't. Anyway, so we're talking, and he tells me that I should, Jesus, God, my dad at the time, told me that I should burn my house down with my family inside of it, and told me how to do it, where everything was at, and that it would set them free. And I really thought about doing that. I really did. I didn't know how to fix anything, and I thought that might have been the only way. And I thought about it for a long time, but I'm really grateful. In my spiritual sickness, I believe I had an angel living next door to me. She was great. Her name was Rachel, and she was my childhood best friend, the only friend that would tolerate and stick around. And, she really planted a lot of seeds in my head of what God is supposed to be, or a healthier idea, maybe not supposed to, but, a better, healthier idea. And I thank her every day for that. And I think about her, if not every day, at least once a week, just thinking of how I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't be able to connect with a higher power. I would have so much resentment. I would have just disappeared into the darkness and would have been very resentful had it not been for her and her grace and kindness. She helped me all the time. I always asked her, I said, well, what do I do? She would tell me, you can only save yourself. You can only focus on yourself. And I'm going to help you. She helped me all the time, try to accept God into my heart and what that looked like. And, she'd hold my hands, and we'd sit in the grass, and she would pray, and she'd say a very thoughtful prayer, and I just could feel nothing. My brain, through all the trauma, just wanted to numb myself, so it did, and it did it without drugs or alcohol. And but with doing that, she really helped me. She really planted those seeds and set that up for me. And at some point, when I couldn't numb myself, I got older and more aware, and it was harder and harder to disassociate. It started with pills mostly. We had a very open pharmacy in our house, just everything, and anything. You take 8 of anything, and you'll feel something. You'll feel anything that you can. But then high school rolled around, and weed was cool, I guess, and I really don't think I actually started to get high off of marijuana until like in this last year, because when I smoked, it just made me numb. And the same thing with drinking. It just made me numb. I could just drink so much and smoke so much. I was just so numb. But now it's like I can feel the effects. One puff, one drink, and I'm a completely different person. I'm something that I don't want to be. And that's a part of health. I don't want to preach therapy or anything, but a part of talking to people, a part of getting help, a part of coming out of that world, that just terrible place that nobody wants to be in. Once you come outside of that and once I came outside of that and got a different perspective, everything else was too intense. Even roller coasters, like, I can't anymore. I just can't take it anymore. I can't do stuff like that. I can't mess with the chemicals in my brain once they're trying to fix themselves and my body's trying to reset. I guess the point of that is there's just always a way out. It may not be when you want it to be. It may not be when you prayed for it. It may not be even how you think it's going to be, but it's going to be there, and it's not too far away. And especially if you reach out, if people reach out and ask for help. And that's what really did it for me. What got me here to Prescott, Arizona. I asked for help. I said, I'm done. I've had enough. I'm full. Can I please go home? Can I please go somewhere that fills me with something other than substances? And my higher power delivered, and maybe not all right away. Maybe it wasn't this shining bright light or this overwhelming voice, but it was a space inside me that was reserved and said, you can come here anytime you want. It's here for you. And I'm just so grateful I'm here in that space, and it's growing, and it's growing into the void. And places like the meeting and fellowship and my awesome sponsor and everybody else in the room, it's just fills that, and especially God most of all fills that, higher power fills that void, and I just think that's awesome. So, and I only have about 3 months of sobriety, so maybe I'm rolling that cloud a little bit, but it feels great, and I think it comes in waves. So, with that, I'll pass. Is that
okay? Okay, I would like to remind everybody, please stay seated during our speaker so you're not disruptive. And at this time, help me welcome Chealsee, our second speaker.
My name is Chealsee, and I'm an alcoholic. I thought that maybe I wouldn't have to speak tonight because I got a couple words in earlier. Mike, I was like, I'm supposed to say things twice? Damn. I have a sponsor. She knows she's my sponsor, and my sober date is April 4th, 2010. What it used to be like, I was raised very well in a nice suburb in Maryland. My two older sisters were prodigies at everything. They did everything the way I wanted to. They looked how I wish I could look. They got the grades that I wish I could get. They were amazing at literally everything, and I just was not handed that card. In fact, it was the complete opposite. I was terrible at everything. I think that I was definitely born with the allergy. I was definitely born with the disease, and that came with a lot of mental health issues, and that came with a lot of crippling anxiety. I mean, at 5 years old, I had the anxiety of a 55-year-old man going through a divorce, like losing his car and getting foreclosed on his home and everything like that. It was just absolute insanity. The smallest things I would just lose my mind about. I was so stressed out. I was really emotional, extremely in touch with my feelings, a little too in touch with my feelings from a young age. In preschool, they would play beautiful classical music to put us to sleep for nap time, and I remember I sat there on the cot sobbing because the music was so beautiful, and everything made me cry, and everything was intense. And I think that definitely was looking back in hindsight now, definitely had a lot to do with how I moved forward with things. I had a hard time learning in school, but even bigger than that, I was bullied heinously from the time I was in elementary school through the time I graduated high school, brutally bullied, really, really horrible, kids saying horrible things, and just being really unfair. So from an early start, I definitely felt like I couldn't fit in anywhere, and I felt like nobody liked me, and I felt like I was never good enough, and nothing about me was good enough. So that didn't help the crippling anxiety. I was literally scared of everything, scared to leave the house, scared to talk to people, scared of what people thought, and cared way too much. I had ADHD. It was hard for me to pay attention. And I just felt I remember from the youngest age just feeling like I was cursed and feeling like I couldn't do anything right. And, with having like my two older sisters like that, I like set the bar unreasonably high for myself. And that was pretty tough too. By the time I was in middle school, I started feeling like really dark, like due to the bullying, and really, really depressed. And my mom is like a really intense Sicilian lady. And I told her, I was like, Mom, I'm feeling depressed. And she was like, well, that is stupid. And I was like, damn. She was intense. And so I felt like I couldn't approach anybody. I felt like I couldn't approach people at home. Felt like I couldn't approach people at school. And that was really, really difficult. So later on, in high school, the bullying got worse, and it got harder because, high school is just a hard time in general and a hard age, and coming into your own, and people get meaner. And I was humiliated like a lot of times publicly by people, and that still, has been really hard for me to get over. Like this would have been my absolute worst nightmare at that time. It still kind of is. No, I'm just kidding. And so, moving on, I tried some marijuana. I didn't like that because I have really bad crippling anxiety, and that made it a lot worse. I was like, how do you guys do this? Like, there's so much going on. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that. And then I tried drinking, and that was interesting. And I tried to do the college thing, and I just was not ready. I also thought it was weird that I was like the only one in my dorm that was like getting carried home by somebody like every night, like to the point of like not being able to walk or function at all, and everyone was just fine. And like like my life is like crumbling, and everyone's just like, oh, I don't know. That didn't work. So I started to do other things. I started trying to work and started to try and, make a normal life for myself as a early 20-something-year-old person would. And that's when my addiction really, really took off. And I started experimenting with all sorts of other things, things that I really enjoyed, and things that I really enjoyed with other things. And then it was, I felt like everybody puts it, like I felt like I was finally free, and I didn't have to feel any pain anymore, and I didn't have to be embarrassed anymore all the time, because I was like in a constant state of embarrassment at all times and humiliation. And of course, all that just went away, and I loved it, and things went downhill really, really fast for me. I was in and out of treatment centers since the time I was 18 or 19, and I'm 28 now, and that's a lot of institutions. And I felt like I couldn't get it right, and I also felt like I had nothing to live for either, because I felt like my whole life was just a collection of failures. Like I would look back and be like, where have I ever succeeded? Like literally I couldn't see one. It's just failure after failure after another failure, and comparing myself to other people. It didn't seem like they experienced that at all. Maybe one or two failures, but not like an entire life full of failure. And and I really, it really opened my eyes. Like I have a really big problem, and I'm really sick, and I can't just go into these treatment centers and cut corners and like do the loopholes and not put 150% of effort into working a program and into getting better. But it unfortunately took me a really long time to actually learn that and then put it into action. So yeah, it took a long time. Some of my traumas from my childhood and young, or later teenagehood or so really began to affect me in treatment centers, and I saw it the same way, and got caught up in drama and other people, and forgot that this was about me, and I had to get better if I ever wanted to have a happy life for myself. So, my last relapse before I got this year sober was the relapse of all the bottoms. It was finally when I hit every single never in the whole world. I became homeless. I got really, really sick. I was in the hospital for 3 months, terminally ill. And a lot happened, but I think it was exactly what I needed. So I came in this time around, and I decided, I literally remember the day, I was sitting there, and I was like, before I used to like do all this stuff just to like please my treatment center, to please somebody else or my sponsor or this and that or my parents, and I was like, what if I just like finally did it for myself? I was like, I honestly, at this point, I have nothing to lose at all. I mean, I've already lost like my whole life thus far. So I started just listening to other people and not running my life anymore because I can't run my own life. And so I gave everything up to my higher power, and I trusted people, and I kind of like sat back, and that was like the best thing for me. The best thing for me was to just let things happen as they happen and let my higher power take control of everything and live in my higher power's will and not my own. And that's made a world of difference for me. And that paired with the fact that like I'm finding out in sobriety, like I can finally be the person that I want to be and the woman that I've always wanted to be. And I just really enjoy like finding different purposes every day of my life, because like sobriety can't just be, meetings and this and that. Yeah, that's a huge part of it and that's a necessity, but that's not everything. I think that exploring and finding new loves and passions and learning about yourself. I mean, there was a point in time where like I didn't even know what my favorite color was, and that's like something everybody should know about. At least I think so. Anything about myself. So yeah, I try and wake up every day and make the most of it, and try to find beauty in small things and recognize everything that I didn't recognize when I was in active addiction. So I really recommend that, everybody be really patient with themselves. If you're just starting this out, be really gentle with yourself, and try not to shame yourself, and try to enjoy, because like life is really short, and you should enjoy everything that you do, every encounter you make, and whatever you do it happily. Try to find happiness in everything, and that's what I do, and it's working so far. So I think I'm done. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, we've had 2 great speakers so far. Let's finish the night with our last speaker. Please help me welcome Bobby.
How's it going? My name's Bobby, and I'm alcoholic. My sobriety date is May 11th, 2019. Not my first one. If I had my book, which I was going to bring it, but I left it in California, there's like 3 dates scratched out. Because I was, I'm a slow learner. Let's see. I've never had to talk in front of a microphone. In California, we just kind of raise our hand. So anyway, so my journey started at 15. And like you've heard, I was, I don't know what happened. My brother seems to think about it a lot different than I do, because I blacked it out. I shut it down. He's like, oh, our childhood was rough. And I think I remember a lot of fighting. And my dad's Mexican, my mom's German-Irish. I came out the lightest of all the 5 kids. But it was very interesting, because the things that took place I thought was normal. Like when we would go to Lake Havasu, there would always be a cooler and Coors Light. And it's like, oh, hey, hand me one. So I thought that was a normal thing. It was either that or a Pepsi. So that's my childhood. I don't remember it. My brother, he has 14 years, and he got a little bit sooner than I did. And so where it originally started that I can remember, I was 15. I was at my aunt's birthday party, and I asked my uncle, I'm like, where's the soda? And he's like, oh, it's in the blue cooler. And I'm open the cooler, it's just Bud Light, and he's like, and I'm like, there's nothing but Bud Light in here. And he's like, oh, just drink it, don't be a pussy. And I'm like, I choked it down. It was gross. I remember that. And it was my sophomore year. So that's when the football party started. And I'm like, it's the first time I got drunk, and I was like, oh, this is really amazing. And it checked out, and I was always kind of went like this. I was, the chubby little fat kid, and I had cystic acne, so I wasn't liked very much sometimes. I switched a lot of schools. My parents would they were divorced when I was 4, then they would separate, get back together, separate, get back together. So it was either back and forth to Lake Havasu City, which Lake Havasu City is where I graduated. And that's where it was, and it was the parties on the weekends, after the football games, and went home. And I remember the first time after the football party, the room was just spinning. I think I've heard a lot of people say that. And all I did was I just laid down. I was like, if you just take this away, I won't do this again. And then, of course, the next weekend came. And so for me, it was just on the weekends. That's all I can do. Or I would sneak some from the cabinet and add water. And that's the way high school was. And then I couldn't drink when I was taking Accutane, so that was a little process. But then I moved back to California after I graduated, and that's when I decided, I don't know what happened. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to school to be a pilot. That's a good idea. So I flew, because it happened after I flew to Alaska to go visit a friend. And then anyways, I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that's where I started flight school and college, and that's when my drinking really took off. That's all I remember. And I just remember going to, all-you-can-drink beer nights. It got to the point where I had to work and pay for everything, but I wanted to party too, and I didn't have enough for that. So back out there, you can donate plasma. So, it was plasma twice a week, so I had beer money. And then got into a relationship, and that went south. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go transfer to Embry-Riddle. And I'm like, well, I drink too much, so I don't want to go to Daytona Beach because I'll drink too much there. So I came out here to Prescott in 2001. And when I walked in, I had to switch rooms because I snored because I drank too much. And so I went into my new roommate's room, and he had cigarettes and a half a gallon of Jim Beam in the dorms. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we just drank and drank and drank and partied, and this is back, I don't know, some of you remember that Prescott Live was here. So that was our spot, like every day of the week. And my parents got really upset because one semester I would be on honor roll, or on the dean's list, and then the next semester I'd be on academic probation. So that's the way it kind of cycled. And then, in 2004, that's when my luck started to run out, and that's when everything crashed. It was, well, I actually got arrested on Christmas break for disorderly conduct. We got in a fight outside of Del Taco. And February 2004 is my first time I got the nudge from the judge to go see, go see a couple meetings because I got a DUI, my first one. And that's when my dreams of flying, everything just kind of came crashing down. I don't know if I knew it then, but my drinking increased exponentially. However you say that. And so that was 2004, and then the weight started packing on because all I did was just sit in the dorms and drink and eat, and that's all we did. And I wasn't married yet. So 2005, I attempted to graduate, and I still needed 20 credits, so I just withdrew. And then I drank some more, and more and more and more. Decided it was a good idea to get married because I was with this girl, and I originally had dated her sister, And then she wanted me to go and hang out with her sister because she wanted to drink because she was not 21. This is when they had the half and half side at Prescott Live. And so we didn't get married till 2009, but we had a kid. And so my first arrest was in 2004, or January, then February, and then October. Me and my buddies went to Flagstaff to go snowboarding before they opened. So we were like, we'll just walk up the mountain. And so we parked at Maloney's, and we had picked up a bottle of Jim Beam at Safeway, went to Maloney's, or the Wells Fargo, drank that. Then we went to Maloney's, got some free drinks from the girls there, hit the gas station, got an 18-pack, and got stuck. Somebody called us in, and I got my second DUI. And then he bails me out, or no, they let me out, but he was staying in a hotel he wrote a bad check for. And it was just, everything that I was with this guy was bad. So I didn't want my parents to know about the second DUI. So I'm like, hey, let's go rent an airplane, let's go to Havasu and see if my aunt will pay for an attorney. And so I get out of jail, get him, we drive back to Prescott, get an airplane, fly to Havasu, and get thrown in jail that night for burglary. And he gets sent to Kingman for a couple days because we couldn't get him bailed out. And then my aunt bails me out. Anyways, it's just a big old mess. And then that was 2004, and then I drank some more. And when I backtrack, when I was in high school, I had a great connection with church, got baptized when I was in high school, but then drinking took place of all that void, and that was my way of checking out and not having to deal with life and not having to deal with people, because people seemed to accept me. And when things were good, the drinking made it better. When things were bad, it made it better. And that's what I thought until, as you read in the book, it talks about you cross that invisible line where the allergy kicks in and there's no turning back. And, we've tried everything that we can, switching and doing this and not on the weekends, but not before 10. And it just became, as I started reading through and doing the steps, I didn't do the steps until I was a little over a year. And I know I'm probably, because I wish I had more time, but I'm all over the place. And so that was 2004, and I had 2 girls by that time. They're 13 and 14 now. And then 2007, her and I got in a fight, and I got thrown in jail because I was fighting with my brother-in-law. And then my mom picked me up, and she's like, all right, I'm going to take you to Betty Ford. I'm like, okay. So I went to Betty Ford outpatient in 2007. I don't know how I got it, but I got 16 months, and I didn't really go to meetings, and I was doing construction. And then they say that if you're not doing things, you're not doing the program, you're not making phone calls, which it's legit. It's like a 1,000-pound phone because I hate making phone calls. And unless it's, to make me happy, to benefit me. And they say, it's a very selfish program, I, self, me, the isms. And I went into Circle K like my usual, because I usually just get something to eat on the way home. And there was the 3-pack tall cans, and that's where I did for the next 10 years. I drank again. And got divorced. And then somehow, I don't know how it happened, but in 2011, I'm like, you know what, let's go back. Let's see what it takes to go back to school and finish this. So I started taking my ADHD medicine. I got, for the first time, on Adderall, which was amazing. And it actually really helped. I can focus, but I was able to drink more. And then, so it was the Adderall during the day, the Norcos for my back, and then the muscle relaxers for the spasms. And that's for the next 3 years. And then I finally graduated in 2013, got married again, and And this is where I think things started taking a turn for the worst, because now I was hiding things, and I when I met her, I got home and I drank, and then my ex-wife showed up on the day of our first date, and she's like, this is what you've been missing. And I'm like, it was a really weird night, but her and I are like really good friends today, and I thought that was okay because I was already drunk by the time she got there. And so we did that, and then I decided to get married again, and she was like, let's have a child. And I said, oh, that's the first time I actually planned for a kid. And so we got married. We met in like April, and we were married in September of 2013. And it was right after I graduated. And we were going to get passports so we can go to Mexico on a honeymoon. Found out she's pregnant. And then we're doing the ceremony because I do the librarian at Riddle. And she let us rent out one of the halls. And anyways, we had a miscarriage in November, and that's when I think I lost it, because everything from then on was just times two. And she's like, and I was devastated, and that's where my faith just, I just kind of gave up with faith. And I said, no, it's fine. It's not you. And then she asked for a divorce at 2 weeks before we were supposed to have our ceremony. And that really screwed me up. And so we get married, we do the ceremony, we go on our honeymoon. I get a tattoo with the wedding date, which is on here. And that was a good idea. It doesn't bug me now. I used to want to get a cover up, but it's just everything else is pretty cool about it. And she gets pregnant on the honeymoon, and we have Christian, so now there's kid number 3. And that's how that worked. And I just kind of stayed at home, and she was a teacher, and I just drank. And I timed it, so I had to learn to time. It was like a process. I had to plan everything out. I'm like, so I drove him to Maverick, got enough beer to get drunk and sober-ish by the time she got home, and I just sold things on eBay. And I had to pay for my drinking, I had to pay for my hunting, and then that went on. And then when he was 4, I'm just kind of fast-forwarding, and I remember we were eating, and I was pouring a drink, and he went to go reach for it, and I'm like, oh, no, not that. He's like, oh, that's Dad's water. I'm like, ugh. So it was shortly after that I decided it was probably a good idea to go inpatient. So in 2018, I went inpatient, a place in Palm Springs called The Ranch, and I did almost 60 days. And but I kept telling my counselor, and he's like, you're not done. I'm like, oh. I was like, don't tell me. And I was really upset about that, so I was going to prove it. And I said, I need to be out of here by December 15th because bow season starts. And he's like, no, I think you should be here for 90 days and do some sober living. And I said, no, I think I'm good. So anyways, I get into a horsing around with one of the guys. I break my arm, so I can't shoot a bow anyways. So I get out and I go home, and I try to get everything back, wife back, kid back, car back, job back, because I kind of just went on leave of absence from Walmart, and I just didn't come back. And so here comes, she's like, all right, so we got an apartment. Everything was going fine. And then I was like, she wasn't giving me the attention. I think that was the deal, because I always had not getting attention as a kid. So she wasn't giving it to me, and there wasn't, the physical stuff was gone because she didn't trust me. But I was like, look, I got 6 months. And so come 6 months and 1 day, I told myself if she doesn't, things don't change, I'm going to go drink. So a week before that happened, bought some vodka. It's been sitting in my truck 6 months and 1 day. I get really drunk and I'm passed out on the couch and she comes home. And that's what I did for the next 6 weeks. And it was bad. And one of the most humiliating things was, there's two things, it was a couple days before I wound up in the hospital. She never goes through my clothes, and then I woke up and I was really hungover, and then I saw her kind of pick up my pants. And then she pulls out a hotel key and she's like, "Oh, what's this?" I'm like, "You know what that is. I don't need to tell you." And so that's when it got really bad. And so I was like, all right, so I'm going to go back over to that person's house and drink some more. And then I woke up the next day and I had and then wound up in the hospital, I was, DTs, and wound up in the funny farm. And what woke me up is I had to, the last day over, the lady's like, let's come, let's go do arts and crafts. So I'm like, what? And I was like, arts and crafts, that's what my drinking got me, was to arts and crafts. And my head went shut up. My brother's like, I woke up, I drank again, and he's like, you can come here as long as you do 90 and 90. And I wound up doing like 200, and that was May 11th, 2019. And through the steps, through the program, and, doing the next best thing, life's gotten better. It's not perfect, but it's better than what it was. So, like I said, I wish I had more time. There's a lot more story to this, but I'm grateful to be here and grateful to be talking to you guys. Thank you.
Let's give our speakers another big hand.